Welcome everybody to HSA Dive Buddy certification course. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm Gabrielle, your instructor. My full name is Gabrielle Gabrielli. And, I want to do introductions really quick, and animals are welcome as Ronnie is holding his love. So we'll do introductions. By the way, before I get any further along, did anyone lose their keys at the volunteer event last Saturday?
Me.
Who? Ronnie?
Yep.
Okay, they've been found.
Awesome. Good. I called them about it, but I guess I
Yeah,
hadn't
they
found
said
it.
someone called them, and I said, well, who called? Because I was like trying to figure out, okay, great. We'll make sure I'll reach back out to them and let them know that we figured out whose keys they are, and we will get them to you.
Awesome. Glad to
How did
hear.
you get out of there without keys?
Spare keys.
Whew, that was smart. Okay. Okay, well, I'm glad they were found then.
Yeah. That'd be
So
nice.
let's go ahead and do introductions. What I'd like to do is have everyone say your name, give us a little bit of background about how long you've been diving, and then what interested you in becoming a dive buddy for people who are differently abled. And let's go ahead and start to the person who joined first.
Oh, hi, Jimena Smith. I've only heard the part of introduce and then why this course in particular. So
Yeah,
if
and
there
then
was something else.
tell us a little bit about your scuba, background.
Okay.
How long you've been diving, how many dives, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So reading the course, like one of the first things I thought about was a family friend of ours. Well, there's two of them, and they both have muscular dystrophy at different levels. And I had just visited one last year, and he's in a wheelchair and he loves the ocean, and he's in the Dominican Republic. And so he loves to be in the ocean. I thought, well, how cool would that be? Because we had talked about a spot where people dive there. And anyway, that's what I thought. I said, how cool would that be if next time I go, I can tell him like, hey, I can help you to make that happen. And he has a big, strong assistant who can help for part of that too. So that would be good as well. So I thought about them, but then as I watched the videos, I really thought about the mental part of what scuba offers, and for myself. And I know you and I spoke about that a bit, Gabrielle, and just for me, I have lived with depression off and on, and at one point was suffering from pretty severe depression. And also like dissociation, which if anybody doesn't know, it sometimes makes you like do things that you probably shouldn't. You have like a less fear of things when you probably should be more fearful. And just going through some of the dive courses, and in particular rescue diver and public safety diver, it almost like helped me to regain healthy fears. Like scuba is obviously one of those things that you need to have healthy fears of, and also just be careful and protective of yourself, and more so importantly of any dive buddy that you have, whether they are full abled or not. And so for me, it was a double thing at that point. It was for myself, so kind of selfish, but for myself in the sense of like, okay, if this helped me so much, like I hope that I can offer that to people with issues similar to mine. And then also for differently able-bodied people who I know and love, and then also those who I don't know, but I may grow to love.
That is
And then
great.
with scuba, I've always been around the water. I just never did scuba. And then when I went to FSU to do archaeology, specifically underwater archaeology, I took the scuba program there at FSU PC. And so I've gone through 3 semesters of that program and gone from open water all the way up to public safety diver. And then when I go back to school this fall and that spring, I'll finish the underwater crime scene investigation course. So that's where I'm at.
Wonderful. And, thank you for sharing that too. We do have a lot of divers with different mental health issues as well. And it's, I just want to say that I think that it's great that you're sharing, and you'll see that many, even on our leadership team, have struggles, and it's okay. And I think the fact that we can use scuba as a way of, I like to call it therapy, quite frankly, but certainly it's a healthy coping mechanism. It's something that always makes you feel better when you do it physically and mentally. So I just think that's great. And then to the muscular dystrophy thing, I wanted to let you know that one of our new students, and I think everyone met him who volunteered at the event, but Roberto has been given a full scholarship, and he has muscular dystrophy, and he's so excited about this. So his health is starting to decline, even though he's pretty young. He's in a wheelchair. His initial reaction when he got in the water with us was fear, of course. And then you could just see when the switch happened, and then he was like, "Can we go again?" Even though we were in a torrential downpour, and and so we're just waiting for him to get medical sign off, and he's actually going to join in the 25th in the class, the group class that starts on the 25th. He'll do the group lectures, but then he'll do one-on-one in the pool starting with May 2nd. So yeah, so that's super exciting. And the one thing I did want to say about muscular dystrophy, and you probably read about it too in the HSA Dive Buddy manual, is that we have to make sure that you get medical sign off to be safe with them, because muscular dystrophy, once it progresses, will often infiltrate the lungs. And once it does that, you really can't safely dive. Now, could you bring him in a pool? Probably, with doctor sign off. But that's why I think it's so important, if you do want to work with people who are differently abled, that you get, educated about what the concerns are, what the expectations are, what the challenges are. So yeah, but I think it's awesome. And I think I'm so happy that you found our group and that you've been involved, including with volunteering. And she's just got a really cool history too. So I think you guys are going to get to know and love her a lot. So
thank you. I'm happy I found you guys too.
Yeah, welcome, Jimena.
Yeah.
All right, Jamie.
Hey guys, Jamie. I think know pretty much all of you guys. Man, I met you at
Jamie,
I met you on Saturday, last Saturday
you-
too.
Oh, sorry. Are you tired? Are you happy
I'm
today?
tired as hell. Yeah, I'm super tired.
Oh, okay.
I started diving about a year and a half ago. One of the reasons I started diving is kind of to cope with my PTSD. I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years and went through some traumatic events, and was doing a lot of stuff that I wasn't supposed to be doing. Wasn't really living like the best life either. But once I started diving, it gave me a different sense of vision, like just like Jimena said before, like you taking care of someone else on the water, you got your body next to you. And he kind of brought me back to the military type, you got your body next to you, you got to take care of them. And now that we're doing the HSA program, like when I was just helping in the pool or helping up in water with regular students, just knowing that they were doing good, that you were teaching them, it make you feel good. And then Saturday when we were working with Roberto, when he went from being tight, scared, to just relaxing and just enjoying it, that was a different feeling, man. I was like, oh my God, like the whole day I was just feeling like emotional, like super excited. So I just can't wait to do that again, like help someone else. It's just like you said, that word handicap or something like that. Like not, I mean, like they're able to do everything, you just gotta, there's different ways, and that's why we're here to help them find that way of feeling the joy or the freedom that they want. So I'm just super excited to have this group with me, and I can't wait to get back on the water and help out.
Awesome. And Jamie, when did you start diving, and what are you doing now for your training? Where are you?
I started in September of 2020, I think. Yeah, and I'm
It's
in
only
the
been
dive master
since September of
program.
2020?
I don't know. No, it's been a year and a half.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Oh, 19. Yeah, 2019. Yep, 2019. Yep. So it's been a year and a half now, and I'm in the dive master program, learning every day. So can't wait to become a dive master.
Awesome. And Jamie is a combat wounded veteran scholarship recipient. And I think one of the really cool things about this whole program is that we have people who are differently abled who are doing leadership as well. And the next person who I'm going to say introduce yourself to is he is what's the word, just paving the way for other people, and that's Ronnie, who is now working on his assistant instructor certification. So it's super, super exciting. Yeah, Ronnie, I'm so glad you're here. And by the way, Jimena said that she works at McClay. I forgot. My brain doesn't work very well. And so she said she could actually pick up the keys and meet you somewhere. So maybe you just
Awesome.
message each other, and yeah, that'd be great. So Ronnie, go ahead and introduce yourself.
So I'm Ronnie. I have been diving for about 5.5 years. 6.5 years. It's been a long time. So I got certified 2015 August. So yeah, I guess we're going on.
We're going on 6 years, I think. So,
Yeah,
I think all of us are in this time warp with COVID. It's just like with Jamie saying last year. I keep doing that kind of stuff too. I just, the years are flying by. But yeah, you've been diving with me for a long time now, Ronnie, and definitely my favorite dive buddy. No apologies about that.
So yeah, I met Gabrielle in the ICU, and she knew I was like big into being outdoors and just being active. So she got me a scholarship for scuba, and then I've just continued since then. I think I'll be done with the assistant instructor as of this upcoming weekend.
You got to just do the pool sessions with the new open water students.
Okay, so after Sunday or the next Sunday?
The next one out. So, Sunday we have a lecture, and then as soon as we schedule their open water pool session, that's when you'll be done.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, you just have to get more pool time in. So.
Okay.
But I think it'll be in the next few weeks.
So yeah, I'll be finishing that super soon, and then I can start working on instructor. And then obviously there's like all the mental benefits and just stress relief and exercise of scuba. That's great for me. But also just like getting out and about, like interacting with other people, and helping out. And it's pretty cool to be one of the only, if not the first, to get these achievements.
Definitely the first with SEI. And like I said, I think I found another one with another organization, but he may have already been certified as a dive master when he became paraplegic. So it's just awesome. And what's interesting to me, Ronnie, and what's really cool is that as I'm starting to meet more people in the industry, they are aware of you, and they're cheering for you. And that's cool. Like, they know about my nonprofit because we've gotten quite a bit of news coverage and media coverage, and, for just the kind of work that we do, the kind of volunteer work that we do. And so, Ronnie's been featured in some magazines and in a promotion about accessible scuba diving in Florida. What was it for? I was going to say Keep Florida. What was it called? My brain right now. Anyway, so, but I love that you're getting the attention that you deserve because you've earned it. And I just think you're such a great diver. And the fact that you're a great diver is just part of it. Your leadership skills are excellent. And so I already see your abilities as an instructor just growing and growing. And so, yeah, I'm super excited for you.
Hey guys, and talking about Ronnie getting all this attention. That Friday I was at the VFW, and started talking to some people. I was just talking about Ronnie and me trying to do a triathlon, and this lady gave me $120 for Ronnie's entrance to the triathlon. She's like, "Well, here's money for him to do the triathlon." And then I saw her back Saturday, and she said, "Well, we want to do a fundraiser for him. So we set a date, June 19, to do a fundraiser for him to get like gear and stuff like that, for the triathlon or any upcoming triathlons that he wants to do. So pretty excited for that. And then another biker bar that I normally go is going to do a 1-month fundraiser for Gabrielle for the organization, so she can sponsor 2 veterans
That's
for
awesome.
for scuba for the open water class.
That
So,
is
yeah.
so awesome. Thank you, Jamie, so much. I love it that, you know, just by talking about your own experience and about people, you know, who are benefiting from the program, that you're able to get even more people. And I know I even said to you, I was like, man, you're killing it. He's like, I'm not even asking. And, you know, I'm just sharing the stories and they're offering. And I'm like, that's even better. That's just even better. I think it's wonderful. And so yeah, I think we're going to have a lot more opportunities, and you know, to get to apply a lot of our skills and to really make people happy, you know, and help them with pain. I know Ronnie and I both have chronic pain issues, and Jamie too. And scuba diving really helps. And I'd say the only time I don't feel any pain is when I'm diving. You know, when I'm in the water, everything's better. And you know, I'd like to say, like, the ocean gives my body a hug, and you know, I just feel amazing. And even any symptoms I'm having, neurological or otherwise, they just go away when I'm in the water. It's pretty awesome. Pretty healing. So I want to, you know, benefit other people as much as possible. My ultimate dream is to build a warm water aquatherapy center. So Jamie, your talents with reaching out to people are very much appreciated, and you know, just letting people know more about the nonprofit and what we do. Something else that, you know, not a lot of people know is that I do a lot more than scuba with the nonprofit. And one of the things that I do is I buy bicycles, including adaptive bicycles. And Ronnie and Jamie both have bicycles that that I bought for them, and now they're getting ready to train. Ronnie did swimming today, and they're training for a triathlon. So I just think that's so cool, because it's a fact that physical activity helps everything. It helps physical symptoms. It helps emotional symptoms. It just helps you be a better person. And so I think it's great. So I'm super proud of you guys.
Yeah, I didn't know that you were doing also these.
Yeah, I started the first bicycle I bought was for a kid who had autism, and he also had some physical challenges. I bought a trike for him, and then I probably have bought about 14 bicycles in the last maybe year and a half. So yeah, and I'm just going to keep buying them. So, you know, and anything else that I think will benefit. I don't think scuba is the only thing that can help people. I think there's a lot of other things. But I also think that the social aspect is really important, which is why I love it when I see people connecting outside of just what we're doing here. That to me is really important, the social aspect. So, you know, this is just great. And I think we have such a wonderful group. Anything else, Ronnie? Jamie? Okay. All right. Gizem?
Hi everyone, I'm Gizem. I've been diving for almost 5 years now, but like the most active times are when I moved to Florida, because the city I lived in Turkey didn't have any sea, any lakes, nothing to dive. Um, why I involved this program, like this HSA diving program, is when I was in Turkey, I was able to work in different volunteering projects, like, and one of them for visually impaired children. And like I felt like when I think about like the past years, these were the best years in my life, because I learned a lot. Like I learned a lot from children, like how to see the things, how to feel with heart and all other stuff. So when I heard this program, I thought it would be a great opportunity for me to give back to like other people. That's why I'm here.
And Gizem, I'm so glad you're here. You have a lot going on, just graduated, just got engaged, just so many things are happening in your life. And I know it's been hectic, and I think now is a really good time to be involved in this class.
Yeah, it's been busy, but like how can I say, I was like, I I'm not gonna lie, I was thinking today, like if I will be able to make it, because I'm a PhD student too. But then I was like, no, this will make me feel really great. So I really want to be there. Like I wasn't the best student, I couldn't watch all the videos, but I really wanted to come and like learn from you, and like I'll finish my other side. But like I think about it, Gabrielle, I was like, I'm so busy, maybe I should drop. But then I'm feeling better that I'm here.
I'm glad you're here too. And I
That's
never
that's
want,
when Jamie that's when Jamie came in and pulled her ears and
I
told her not
love
to drop
it.
out.
I love it. So I do think, I don't ever want this to be a burden for anyone. And I know we all have busy lives. My life just kind of got a little, a little jolt of, oh, you think you don't have free time now? Let's just add more things. So today I had chemo for, much of the day until I just got home like an hour ago from chemo. And that was unexpected. I didn't think that I was going to be having to go back for treatment. So we just kind of, by the way, there's my kitty cat in the background who's kind of disappearing. That's Willow, who's blind. When you talk about working with people who are visually impaired, Gizem, people ask me all the time, have you worked with divers who are visually impaired or blind? And I said, yes, I've actually worked with several. And they're like, well, why? And I'm like, why not? You guys probably heard, if you listen to the lecture, the first video, and that guy was somebody who was a diver before he lost his vision, and he was saying, like, why would I? But I do a lot of tactile things, and the fact that you can still breathe underwater, and you can still feel neutral buoyancy, and there's many benefits to it. So far, every time I volunteered with other organizations, I've typically been paired with either people who are blind, visually impaired, or have paraplegia or amputations. So,
And Gabrielle, the childs I've been working with, they were like, their family didn't want them. So they were in boarding schools by themselves. So I was like, I learned a lot then, but like I just remember one memory, like which is one of the most powerful memories I had. When for our first meeting, I don't know why, I bought flowers, but flowers in the pot to them. Like I was like, okay, it's a great introduction, like they will love it and all their stuff. But I was like, I guess 19. And then as soon as I entered the room, I was like, nobody was seeing anything. That's why like they didn't realize I have flowers. I said, like, hey, I brought you flowers. But as soon as I said it, I was like, oh, how stupid I am. Why did I brought this? I could find another activity to meet with them. And then one of the child like told me that, can you give it to me? And I gave him, because he was like crazy about flowers. He touched the leaves, he smelled it, and he said, what is exactly? I was shocked. I was like, it was like one of the really best memories, because I learned that I shouldn't assume anything without giving people a chance. Like I shouldn't assume that they will not be able to do it without like giving a try. But then I was like, I started to cry, I remember, because I felt so bad. I was like, I'm a bad person. I don't need to enter this school. Like I was feeling that feelings, but like it's one of the best memory now. Like anytime I start to judge any people, I just remind myself this memory and like take a step back.
that's a beautiful memory. And we do have to stop making assumptions, right? We often make assumptions because we don't know people who have these different abilities than we have. And the more time you spend, and that's one reason I love to integrate the people who don't have disabilities with the people who do, is because you get a chance to know people and to understand what their challenges are and understand what their capabilities are, which is kind of mind-blowing when you start seeing how fully capable most people are, regardless of any physical limitations they may have. So that's a beautiful story, Gizem. I really like that. Melissa, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm not driving.
Oh, your doggy.
This is Maxwell. He's going to start screaming soon because I don't know what he wants, but I think he wants something. Just wait. I have been diving for just over a year now. I'm now in advanced nitrox and not rescue. First,
Yeah, you're rescue.
I'm rescue. Okay. Wasn't quite sure. I started diving because I used to be a swimmer, and I wanted a way to get back in the pool that wasn't going to be as traumatic as the way I had to leave the pool the first time. So I suffer from a lot of mental health issues, and reading through, I think I might actually have some PTSD as well. And so I was excited about getting in the water again. And the main reason I signed up for this class is I'm a Special Olympics coach. And the main reason I signed up is because I'm going to be able to assist Gabrielle with, I forget his name, at the Georgia Aquarium.
JR. And let me just
JR.
tell you right now, JR is having some challenges. And I'm not 100% sure if he's going to be there. I told him, you know, we still have time. So we're going to just move forward and plan as if he's going to be there. But I just want to let you know the thing about people. So JR has quadriplegia, and with quadriplegia, it's a lot. It's probably the most challenging disability, quite frankly, including with scuba diving. It's, you know, there's very little function physically that the person has due to paralysis. And he doesn't, you know, he doesn't have use of his hands or anything else. So we have different ways of adapting. And I did take him in the aquarium at Epcot, but we had a break because of COVID where we weren't practicing in the pool much. And so when we got him in the pool at the last pool session, he had forgotten how to clear his mask, and that was stressing him. And, you know, I think it's overcomable. I do. I just think that we probably, Melissa, if you and I can go over to JR's house, and he's got a shallower pool, and just work with him on some basic skills, it'll give you a chance to see what it's like to work with him too.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then Roberto also might be coming, so you might be, you know, so we'll see. I obviously wouldn't have him in the same pool at the same, you know, time slot. So, but
they dive at different times, and we'd help them.
It would be different times. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So.
Yeah, and then I'm super excited because on our pool session, I was able to reach out to one of my Special Olympic friends, our friends that I met through Special Olympics. And we've gone to like prom together a few times, and she'll be able to come. She's a fantastic swimmer, and I'm excited that she'll get the opportunity to try this out. I think she's going to do great. So.
How old is she, Melissa?
I think like 35 or 36.
Okay. Well, you know, I am perfectly open to offering scholarships to some of your people in Special Olympics too.
Yeah, I want to get her the option to try it first, and then I can start talking to her. Because yeah, I'll see how she reacts.
Sure. Yeah. You know, and we have some adaptive things that that we didn't get a chance to use at our last volunteer event, but that includes a full face mask for anyone with facial sensitivities too. So.
I'm not sure what her diagnosis is. I think it's mostly intellectual. So physically, mostly it's fine. A breaststroke kick is a little different, but that doesn't really affect here. We're not perfect swimming stroke isn't an issue. So that's the only adoption she has in swimming. It's just a good friend of mine.
That's awesome. All right,
yeah,
Bill.
Answer anything else? No,
yeah.
Bill's time.
Oh, I love your doggy's face. That's so cute.
He's cute.
Bill, can you turn your camera on by any chance?
Gonna try.
There we go.
So Bill Dawes, I'm a dive master. I got my dive master up under Gabrielle. I've been diving coming up on 4 years now. And I got into this to help other people enjoy scuba diving and expand my own knowledge.
Okay. Short and sweet. Excellent.
Short and sweet.
Let me ask you guys, I know you're all busy. I heard Gazem say she didn't get a chance to watch all the video, all the lectures. So did anyone else not get a chance to watch everything? Speak up.
I watched the lectures, but I'm not finished with the book yet.
Okay.
I couldn't finish watching the last video completely, but I watched most of both videos, the 1 and 2, and half of the third one.
Well, let me propose this to you just based on the fact that a few of you haven't had a chance, and Frank had his sister come into town and surprise him, and so he's not here. why don't we go through the rest of the lecture and watch the videos that weren't very clear? And I was going to have you do the exam tonight, but I think what I'd like to do is maybe give you a little more time to finish the other lectures, and then you know, just have an opportunity to do it offline. Is that all right?
I love it.
Okay, and then we'll just come back together for a short time to go over the exam together, if that works for everybody.
Yeah.
So tonight will be shorter as a result, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right,
Gabrielle, before we start, can I say a really simple thing?
of course.
I might be closing my camera like for 15 minutes because one of my Turkish friends is my house. He came for my graduation and it's Ramadan, so he's fasting. I just need to like get a plate for him, but I will be here like listening.
Sure. So he's fasting and you're getting a plate for him?
Yes. It's like something religious. I don't know if you guys
No, I know
it.
what Ramadan is. So, but
Yeah.
okay.
Like,
So
they
he's
are not-
stopping fasting if you're getting him a plate.
Sorry?
He's stopping fasting if you're getting him a plate, right?
Yeah, he was like fasting like more than 70 hours now.
Yeah.
And like not drinking water, even not drinking
Yeah.
water is allowed during fasting.
Well,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
but
I think
I-
that's awesome. And I think that's really great that you have some food prepared for him too.
Yeah, I'll just put, I cooked all the stuff. I just put to the table plates. But I'm
Nice.
here. I'm here.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let me get a quick group picture then before you guys can turn your cameras
Okay.
off. Ready? Get your animals too if you have them.
No.
All right. Get Cleo. All right. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, you got. Oh, look at the doggy. Uh-huh. Okay, here comes my dog too. But he's,
Oh, okay. Oh, Finn.
I just can't get a picture when he's doing this. That's funny. Okay, Finn. Okay, buddy. Okay. All right, man. Okay. Getting up to crashing the little lecture. Okay. All right. I don't know why he disappears. His code is unique, and so he does like disappear a lot. So like, I have an invisible dog.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to share a screen, and I'm going to start from the point where let's see here. I'm not finding my PowerPoint. One moment. Let me go ahead and click a couple more things. But I'm going to start from the point of the third recording. So at the time, I was using a different technology than Zoom, and it kind of cut off a couple of times. And so I had 3 recordings from the same lecture, and it was the last one that was most problematic. So let me just try to share again here. There we go. So I'm going to start with this was the slide that was on that third lecture. And those of you who haven't had a chance to watch the others, just go back at your convenience, and hopefully we can reconvene before, well, I'd like to reconvene before May 2nd if possible, just to go over the exam. Okay. So swimming techniques for the people who are mobility impaired. Breaststroke is a typical kind of stroke. It's strong and sweeping, followed by gliding. Those of you doing triathlons, I highly recommend the breaststroke. As the diver slows, you keep the hands close to the body and then bring them back in position, and you stroke and glide. Sculling is a technique of kind of cupping the water. Your hands are close to the body at the hip level in a circular motion. I don't personally think that this is a great motion to do. You're not going to get a lot of propulsion, but for people who are extra mobility impaired, this may be something like JR might do this technique. Divers can move close to reefs and marine life like we do with fins. But a much more likely scenario with people with paraplegia is the top one, the Darfkin glove. This is what Ronnie wears. And I think it's a really great way to help propel with web gloves. They say 3-fingered scuba mitts work well in cold water, but we don't dive in cold enough water. I've never seen anyone wear 3-fingered mitts. I don't think that it would help you with propulsion very much at all. But the web gloves add up to 30 to 50% of increase in propulsion for breaststroke swimming. And, it's just a great way to move through the water. And when you watch people with paraplegia dive with these gloves, it's pretty awesome, like how much of an aid it is and how fast they can go. So exits from the water for all boats, you're going to take off the equipment in the water. I don't care if someone has a back injury. Bill has a back injury too, right? Maybe not to the point where you have to take your gear off all the time, but certainly if you're having any back issues, this would be something to consider. You're going to take your gear off in the water. And then, and if you have a weight belt, most of us wear integrated, but you know, I assisted somebody when I was in Jupiter who had a back injury, and we took her weights out of her integrated BCD, and we handed those up. And then I helped her take her BCD off, and then she went ahead and got herself out of the water, and then I handed up the gear. So. But you're always going to leave the mask on and snorkel in place and exit the water. Interesting story about my last trip to Jupiter. You guys know that in open water, I always teach about the possibility of falling back in the water and why it's so important to keep your mask on, snorkel in your mouth, or regulator. But I teach about it, but I've never actually had it happen to me until last weekend. So I have some neurological challenges, and I was having really bad ones that day where I just had neuropathy in my hands, and I don't have good grip strength, so I tend to kind of do a modified way of getting up ladders anyway. But this is a tall boat, and I got up and I fell back in. Like I fell like completely, like 8 feet back in the water. And everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm fine. This is why I wear a snorkel." By the way, nobody else on the boat was wearing a snorkel. You know, and truly, it wasn't a problem at all. I might have banged, you know, got a couple bruises, but from the my legs from hitting the ladder. But that's another reason you always leave the mask and snorkel in place. So, and assisted exits from the water. There's different ways of assisting people to get out of the water. There's typically an in-water dive buddy. This picture shows what I would not recommend. If you're the in-water dive buddy, you need to be safe. You need to always have your mask on, snorkel in your mouth at all times. And the only reason you would even take the snorkel out of your mouth is to talk to somebody who's assisting, you know, who's higher up. But you're going to position the diver on their back, remove any weight belt, take off their BCD. You could use it as a float if needed. Some people are really good and buoyant, like Ronnie's really good in the water. He doesn't really need a float. But this would be maybe for somebody who had extreme mobility issues and maybe weren't a good swimmer. And then you're going to assist on the dive platform. There's going to be an assistant on the dive platform who's going to tuck their arms, tuck their arms under the person's underarms to try to help pull them up. And the in-water dive buddy moves the BCD away and positions the diver in the upright position at the exit point. And then the in-water dive buddy drops under the water, grasps the diver's legs, and tries to, you know, kind of push them up. That's one technique. At the same time, the assistant on the dive platform would lift and secure the diver onto the platform. We use, and I'm not sure if it's in this slide or not, but we use with Ronnie, we have a, when we dive with Panama City Dive Center, they're really good, right, Ronnie? How would you describe how they typically help get you out of the water?
It's been a little bit, but I'm pretty sure they just grab underneath my arms.
I thought they actually carried you up the ladder.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're not a big person. Like if it were JR, that would not be doable, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think they pretty much just kind of lift you up. I still need to look into that. I mentioned it in the lecture, and I really need to look at my notes and reach out to that person who developed the system, that harness system. I want to get that for the nonprofit because it's so much more safe than anything that most people do. So. Unassisted exit from the water. A mobility impaired diver can use a dive platform just using their arms. An assistant on the dive platform would lift them under the arms and pull them forward onto the onto the deck. And of course, legs are always a concern. So an in-water diver would lift the legs. Some divers with paraplegia and leg amputations can exit without assistance. I've seen it. It's really amazing. It takes a lot of work to get the arms strengthened up to that point. But I'm kind of blown away with several people that I've seen with amputations and with paraplegia moving freely around with their arms. And man, they have big guns. So they're working out a lot, and their arm strength is so great that they can just move themselves around on the dive boat, and getting themselves in and out of the water. And I would love that for you, Ronnie, at some point. I know you're already getting like a lot stronger, and I think that would just be really cool to be able to do that. I think it probably takes a lot of work, but the fact that you're training for a triathlon tells me that this is something that I could definitely see you doing. Special considerations in dive planning. Obviously, when we're diving with people who are differently abled, we want to be very, very aware that we need to be even more on the conservative side with decompression concerns and with dive tables. So disabilities like spinal cord injuries can cause changes in circulation and neural tissue. And so, when we talk even in open water about dive tables, we say that if you have any conditions, and we're not taking even that into account. Let's say that you've taken Sudafed because you're having sinus issues and you have a spinal cord injury, then you really want to be like 2 steps more cautious on the dive tables. So spinal cord area of injury is considered scar tissue, and between that and the reduced circulation, it may cause differences in on-gassing and off-gassing. The diver could develop decompression sickness within the no decompression limits, but it's still not very common. In fact, HSA has been training people with spinal cord injuries for how many decades now, and they haven't had any incidents whatsoever of divers with spinal cord injuries having decompression sickness. But be conservative. We in our agency, we stress being conservative anyway. We're just going to be extra conservative. Always dive well within the no decompression limits. And then, of course, like always, make a safety stop. That being said, when we do deeper dives, there's a lot of science that says that doing 2 safety stops is the right thing to do. It's even more safe. So if we're doing a dive to 110 feet, we're going to half that distance, and at 55 feet, we're going to do 1 safety stop, and then we're going to do our regular safety stop. And there's a lot of science that backs that up, as that's a great way to even further make sure that you're accounting to off gas better. And then, of course, have a nice low ascent rate, like always. Safety margins are definitely built into dive tables and computers, but don't push the limits. So any questions about dive tables and people with disabilities? All right. So we're going to talk about sun protection, staying cool, staying hydrated, staying warm, preventing hypothermia, which is a really important thing, especially with people with spinal cord injuries, and protecting against abrasions, which you guys saw even with our diver, Roberto. We have to put boots on. We have to make sure when people can't feel parts of their body, then it's even more important to protect those parts. Sun protection. Yeah, all divers may forget. I personally don't like using sunscreen. If you're going to use sunscreen, please use reef safe sunscreen. But UV protective clothing is great. A dive skin will do wonders. Overheating can happen a lot faster for divers with spinal cord injuries and amputations. So people, especially with spinal cord injuries, can't regulate their core body temperature. And so the tendency to get cold and warm is definitely a concern. But ways to prevent, make sure you have some shade, some cool downs with water. Stay hydrated. That's really important. Dehydration is going to cause increased risk of bladder infection and a drop in blood pressure, both of which are never a good thing. So you have to remind yourself, I'm constantly telling my divers to hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. But if you do have anything like a spinal cord injury, then you want to make sure you are especially cognizant of the importance of hydration. Multiple sclerosis and diabetes have different risks, but hydration is a key part of that. And then the dive buddies who are assisting them should know too, and should always offer water, make sure that, it's different if you're kind of stuck in a certain place on a boat because you're in a wheelchair. It's not like you can easily get over to the water cooler, right? And so if they don't have their own water bottle with them, or even if they do, make sure you offer to go get them some water. Staying warm and preventing hypothermia is a really important thing. Mild hypothermia could cause hyperreflexia, and it could also cause headaches. And, if you have multiple dives, repetitive dives, then that's going to be much more likely to happen. So what can you do to help prevent it? Make sure you have adequate layering of your wetsuits. Hood is really, really important. Definitely something protecting the torso. Not a fan of dry suits, especially for people with disabilities. Are very hard to get into and out of. And then there's also special considerations that are challenging. Warm water after a dive is good. I often would bring like hot chocolate and stuff. I think, didn't we used to bring thermos too, Ronnie, of hot water? Blue Grotto with that fire, we get the fire going. Last time we had someone with a portable heater, which I thought was really cool. I do have like some hand warmer things too, but those kind of things are really important. And drinking hot liquids between dives is a great idea. Staying hydrated also. Go ahead, Ronnie.
You also have the heated rash guards. I don't know if you mentioned that.
Thank you. No, I didn't mention that. So they're very expensive, but they're really, really important. So I got the first heated rash guard for Ronnie. Gosh, was that 5 years ago or so when I got it?
I think it was about 4 years ago.
Okay. And and it's been such a great tool to help with staying warm. And it has 3 levels of heat. Maybe, is it 2 or 3 levels of heat? I think it's maybe 2. I think the third one is green, right?
Yeah, you're right. And
then it's a wonderful thing that really helps the most important part of the body when you have a spinal cord injury. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Ronnie, because I did completely forgot about it. So you also want to make any needs known to the dive operators. So, and if the person has a service dog, the water includes water for the service dog too. And the person may have brought their own, but don't assume, and definitely make sure that you offer water to the service dog as well. You do want to protect against abrasions. Tissue breakdown is increased after diving, and of course there are things like pool decks and now toilets and shower facilities pretty much we don't use on a boat, although there is normally access to a warm water shower, which is nice. There may be abrasive non-slip surfaces as well that the diver could easily scrape themselves on. So you want to cover those areas and always have a padded area to sit on if they don't have their own wheelchair. So I've worked on some volunteer groups where they made the people leave their wheelchairs back at the dock. And so they didn't have their wheelchairs the whole time. So they were sitting on either the floor or on a bench. So those would be the kind of things, if you did, you would want to make sure that it was comfortable and safe. You do want to inspect any areas that the person is going to be for any abrasive surfaces. And if there are any risks, you want to point them out if at all possible. And of course, we want to have the person wearing a wetsuit and wearing boots and things to cover those areas. So that's the dive activities module. And then we'll move on to accessibility considerations. Accessibility is a person using a wheelchair can, without assistance, conveniently access and use all available facilities. But the world is not a perfect place, and not all environments are accessible. There are resorts, beaches, boats, restaurants that do have barriers often, but there are requirements for accessibility. And one thing I really like about HSA is that they have a long history of going and visiting sites before they have events at those sites, and they make sure that it's fully accessible. And that includes accessible parking, walkways, ramps, entryways, bathroom and toilet facilities, pool, beach access. And now with these Moby mats, it's really making it a lot more accessible. And our state park system has done a beautiful job of making sure we have these at most of our beaches now, which is great. And many, including St. Andrews, have beach wheelchairs that are available to rent at no charge. And that just makes it even further accessible. Also, resorts and hotels need to have accessibility. And so when you talk about international travel, especially, that's a consideration. Accessible parking, obviously, are wider, and that would allow wheelchairs to be moved in and out of the vehicles. Ronnie, you and I have had some experiences, I know, just with me with you. So I know you've had a bunch more when I'm not with you. But it is frustrating to me when people think that that extra space that's there is just somewhere they can squeeze into. And Ronnie and I were at an event. I can't even remember what it was right now, but I remember it was on West Tennessee Street and there wasn't a lot of parking. But of course, Ronnie got a really nice accessible space, but then some idiot decided to park him in and parked his little car in the extra space. And I was so mad, right? Didn't I get on the microphone and I was like, whoever's, and it turns out it was somebody I know and somebody I really dislike. Okay, somebody I've known for years who is just a tool, a jerk. And it just was affirmation to me that he is the epitome of a jerk. I know, because I'm laughing. But you know, who does that? We were traveling in South Florida and that happened outside of a restaurant, right? And it wasn't even crowded there. And it's like, what is wrong with people? So I just encourage you, if you see anyone doing that, to report them, call the police. You know, I've called the police on, there's a yellow Hummer that used to like to park in the disabled spot at outside of Coral Reef. And I caught him there like 3 times, and every time I called the police. I knew who owned it. It's the person who works in the vape shop. And there's plenty of other parking. And even if there wasn't, they could go park around back or something. They can walk. And so I called police on them like 3 times, and I guess they ended up getting a pretty hefty ticket. So they don't park there anymore. You'll see them parking in other spaces. So, but if you do see anyone parking illegally, and obviously not all disabilities are visible. If they have a placard, assume that they have a disability. If they don't have a placard, then report them. So, yeah. Walkways need to be accessible too, and there's a lot of specifics in the manual about, you know, how walkways should be. Ramps as well, including the rise and the length. Most people can push up a 5-degree ramp and not tip over backwards. Entryways, you know, I have seen some wheelchairs lately that are much wider for bigger people. And I think that especially that would be really important if you were doing a destination, that you made sure that they had fully accessible rooms. So older properties might not have that. So yeah, there can be custom wheelchairs as well. Pulling doors open, you know, that's not really a fun thing to do. So even if you can physically do it, it's not very easy to open a door and then try to get your wheelchair in it, right? Lever door openers in place of doorknobs are a little bit more helpful. Bathroom and toilet facilities also need to be accessible with unobstructed area around those. And another pet peeve of mine is people who are able-bodied using the toilet facilities, like in a restaurant or wherever, you know, where they decide that they want more space in that spot. And I personally have been in a wheelchair. I was in a wheelchair for 8 months, and I encountered this quite a bit. It was really frustrating because I would go in and, there would be like 3 open stalls, and then there was someone in the disabled one. And, and I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and they were in there just like putting their makeup on or whatever. And they come out, and maybe they did have a disability, but they certainly looked guilty when they came out, so I don't think they did. But that is a pet peeve of mine. Don't use that, that stall unless you need it. The door needs to open out of the room to 90 degrees. I went to a conference when I was in a wheelchair, and it was in New Orleans. And I was so frustrated. And I don't remember if I said this on the video, but I was so frustrated because I had asked for an accessible room, and they didn't have one when I got there. Everything about this hotel was frustrating. And it was a major brand too. And they put me on like the farthest side of the hotel. So I would have to hand wheel every single time, to get to the elevator on the other side, and then go, by the time I would get somewhere, I was exhausted. It was like as far away as possible. But they also had run out of accessible rooms, they said. And so I had to physically, they put me kind of in this corner, and I had to get out of the wheelchair, which fortunately I was able to do, but I had to kind of hop and maneuver my way around and then pull the wheelchair in to just get in the room. So it's awful. So when I do any kinds of bookings, like I'm doing for the Georgia Aquarium trip, I make sure that they have a fully accessible room. I wouldn't even go anywhere if they didn't have fully accessible rooms for everybody. Yeah, and sometimes there are things like pipes under wash bins and that kind of thing. Shower facilities, roll-in shower facilities. Pool facilities, everywhere pretty much with pools is accessible now, but mechanical equipment that isn't used that often does have problems and breaks. And so we even had that happen at FAMU, right? And they did get it fixed, but we've had challenges with the one at Blue Grotto also broke, and they got it fixed. But there's always going to be times when it's not functioning the way you want it to. And so in that case, you need to try to make accommodations. So like Ronnie is really good now at he can get himself out of his wheelchair and into the water without a lift, which is pretty awesome. And so, you probably are going to have people who can't do that, and then you just need to safely lift them in and out of the water. Beach access. If it's super sandy, it's going to be a lot harder, but there are beach wheelchairs now, and then there are these Moby mats that really help. Ramp systems throughout facilities and hotels. I would say most hotels in the United States are fully accessible now. Have you had any challenges, Ronnie, as you've been to hotels?
I really haven't been to any.
Yeah,
I think
the ones we went to, right?
Yeah. Yeah, in general, like they've been fine. Like usually the bathroom stuff isn't really that great.
Mm-hmm.
One time it even broke on me, but
What broke on you?
the shower bench.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Yeah, it was a plastic one.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Wow. And you're not a big person. That's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So that's definitely the biggest one, is like more of the stuff that people don't generally think of.
Right. So HSA actually has a form, and they want you to submit if you ever do have challenges places, or if you have a good experience, so that you can let them know. It's on page 68 on the HSA website. That being said, if you visited the website lately, it has some issues. In fact, I've had a hard time for the last, it's been down for, gosh, a month or so, as they've been transitioning to a new system. And so I tried to order some HSA dive buddy materials for you guys, and I couldn't. So I've been Facebooking back and forth to the head of HSA, like, hey, how can I get these? So they're working on a brand new website. So accessible websites are another issue completely. And I'm big on Section 508 compliance. Finn, no, you just went outside. So the information from the form can be used by people with disabilities, and then they can make an informed decision if that's really where they want to go. Any questions? All right, beach and boat use, including stairs, sand, and boats. We've talked about some of this already. But yeah, I mean, you have to kind of expect the unexpected, and there's probably going to be some challenges. We are really fortunate to live in the States, I'll tell you, because I have visited other countries, including when I was in a wheelchair, and it kind of sucks. You know, like ADA is awesome. And it's just a different world in other countries. Sometimes they're probably 20, 30 years behind us in terms of even accepting people with differences. That being said, most of the places that I've been are very accommodating to people who are differently abled, and even if they don't have accessibility, they'll find a way to make it accessible. Going downstairs in a wheelchair with assistance, have you done much of that, Ronnie?
Besides in rehab, no.
Okay.
Like curves and stuff like that, but I've heard of, I met people who go up and down stairs in their wheelchair, but
Yeah. I had
I've
to
not been
do
that
it when I
way.
was in Belize because there was there were no ramps anywhere, but I don't recommend it. It's pretty scary.
Normally what I'll
Um,
do is I'll just get out and like bump myself up and then just have someone grab the wheelchair and then bring it up or
oh,
down to me.
wow.
Yeah, it's a
That's
lot easier that way, a lot less scary.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, I definitely don't have the arm strength to do that, but yeah, a helper can get behind a wheelchair and kind of pop a wheelie and then hold the backrest and tip the wheelchair back onto its rear wheels. There's a sweet spot though of not tipping it too much. Facing the stairs, hold the backrest and ease the chair down the stairs forward one step at a time. And then the person in the wheelchair can help assist by holding back on the wheelchair push rims. Yeah, and of course, if you hopefully you have a second helper who can make sure that you don't fall out of the wheelchair. So the helper is for security, and that person should hold the frame but not actually lift up. Going upstairs in a wheelchair is the opposite and probably slightly easier. Going up and downstairs out of the wheelchair with assistance is liberating. Would you describe it as liberating, honey?
It's something.
Yeah, I know, right? But the mobility impaired diver can sit on the floor, place their hands on the first step, and lift themselves up. Then a helper can actually help with their legs if they need help, and then repeat the process. And then without assistance, and I've seen this, it's pretty mind blowing, where people can just move about freely with their arms up and down the stairs. Crossing soft sand. Get out of the wheelchair if you don't have a beach wheelchair. People with a strong upper body can kind of scoot themselves across the sand. You could pull somebody through the sand. I'm not really a fan of this. We did a little of, I don't know if you guys saw the video, but with Roberto, we pulled him in the water, but we didn't want to pull him on the sand. I mean, if you have more than one person assisting, then we do a proper lift. Finn, stop whining. Crossing soft sand, you could use a wheelchair and pop a wheelie. That's kind of scary though. I know I had that experience in the wheelchair when I was in one, and it's just kind of scary, and because you end up increasing your risk of falling. And often when people are trying to help you who don't have like training in trying to help you, that's when the challenges happen, and you don't want to make them feel bad either. Boarding boats almost always requires a person to be carried on board. It was interesting when we volunteered with Dive Pirates. It's the first time I've ever seen it. We would actually lift them in their wheelchairs onto the boats, and it was really dangerous the way the boat was set up and the ramp was set up. I didn't think that it was a very wise thing to do. It every time I was just like holding my breath, and I know other people felt the same way. So it obviously can be dangerous, and if the chair tips, the person could be thrown from it. Wheelchairs are sometimes used on board. We intentionally choose charters that allow having wheelchairs on board because it does make it, much more comfortable for the person. They typically have all the items that they need in their wheelchair, and it's comfortable and it's safe. And so that is, I think it's a nice thing. Some people need it for balance, and for others, they may not want their wheelchair on board and they like to kind of scoot around on it. For sight impaired, especially on a boat, you want to make sure that you remove any obstacles, and familiarize them with the layout of the boat by taking them around the boat and explaining where and what things are. For hearing impaired, introduce them to everybody and make sure that they are also aware of where everything is. Have someone available for sight impaired and hearing impaired divers at all times. So if you're a dive buddy to somebody who's sight impaired or hearing impaired, you want to make sure that you've already checked with other people, like, hey, if I need to use the bathroom or whatever, can you please, make sure that you're there in case the person needs any assistance. The dive platform is a really important consideration, and it should extend out far enough to accommodate a diver in the seated position. This is just with certain boats. Most boats don't even have a dive platform like this. But if it did, you would have enough space to allow 2 assistants to help divers in and out of the water. And here you can see where the dive platform's even with the water, and the ladder is on one side, and there are no obstructions. On a boat deck, you want to have people seated in the shaded area whenever possible, because the risk wearing a wetsuit of overheating is real. And then with beach and boat use, that was it. Beach and boat use, that was the summary of that. Any questions? All right, so that I think was
Panama
it.
City, Ronnie, how do you get in the water with Panama City?
Well, it depends on whether we're doing a shore dive or a boat dive. So obviously the boat dive is more of like a, back roll in, or, I've had times where people just kind of basically just like throw me overboard.
I was curious if you've ever been thrown overboard, and I was like, that doesn't sound very. I mean, back roll seems kind of dangerous because it's pretty high up there. So I think throwing in my back, I don't know.
I want to say it was with my veteran friend. Yeah, he was just like, what's the easiest way to get thrown? And I was like, if you want to throw me, you can throw me. And he was like, are you sure? And I was like, I'll be fine. He threw me and I was fine.
Did you get thrown in with your gear?
Yeah, I had my mask and all my air. That way I didn't have to worry about like the snorkel going under or anything like that, just straight on air, and just kind of drop in. And then from the beach, it's a little more difficult because we got to worry about like getting to the shoreline and stuff like that. But we've used the beach wheelchairs in the past, and those make it pretty convenient.
Thank you.
I got a question, Ronnie. So do they let you bring the wheelchair in Panama City or not? Yeah. Let's say they don't let you bring one. Can you bring like one of those like stadium chairs to sit on to be more comfortable?
That's a great question, Jamie.
Do they let you do that?
You could do that. That is a really great question, and a really important one. And that's, I have stadium chairs, and that's such a great idea because they want you to have somewhere soft to sit. So, and the only place that I've seen where they didn't allow the wheelchairs on the boats were in other countries, and then in the Keys when they had like, 10 divers in wheelchairs on one boat. There just wasn't enough room to have, the dive buddies and the people with disabilities and the crew and 10 wheelchairs. Those are great questions. There are volunteer opportunities. You probably heard me talk about it last time. It's a lot less so since COVID, but I can tell you that I think that it's going to start happening again more, where you, as an HSA dive buddy, they're constantly looking for people to be dive buddies, and they'll pay for everything, including your hotel and your travel. And you'll go as an HSA dive buddy and actually get to assist, including in other countries. So it's neat. What other questions?
Mine was, it's probably kind of obvious, but so if we're doing these type of dives with HSA connection going through, they've assumedly already gotten all like the medical background requirements and stuff, so they would have all that on file. But I guess what would there be circumstances, like I'm sure that you require that for anyone that's going through your program, like are there cases where that's like more or less confusing through other organizations, or in other cases where you might be using your HSA Dive Buddy cert?
No, so all organizations use the same PDIC medical questionnaire, including HSA, SEI, and every other organization that's out there. They all have the same form. People with special needs have to get medical sign off because they're going to answer yes to those questions. They have to get medical approval. So that's what we're waiting on with Roberto. He went to a doctor here who didn't know his history and said, I really want you to get to a specialist just to make sure your lungs are good, which I think is great. These events that we do, they have a general liability waiver, and we really don't take them deep. We have had circumstances where we have people who are already certified, and then we take them deep. They're already certified divers. We're going to treat them just like any other already certified divers. And we've had several times like that. But for most people, they've just signed a general liability, not a medical for the volunteer events. And therefore, we're going to be really careful. We're not going to take them deep. We're not going to do anything that could harm them.
Yeah.
So we typically stay on the shallow end of the pool, yeah.
And I guess that was sort of like a follow through, and it's just stuff I'm thinking about and haven't processed it completely. So sorry if it sounds dumb, but certain, so I know like with what we just did, obviously that person wasn't certified. So those are short stints that you're saying that you do, but given somebody's condition, like if you're out, in another country and you're diving, and would it be cases where different people can dive for different time frames? And that would also be.
I can tell you most people that I have dived with, and I've dived with a bunch of people with all different kinds. Most people that I've dived with are able to do full length dives.
Okay.
They may not be as deep, we're probably going to be doing, typical kind of open water dives, with some exceptions. And it's just going to be a normal dive. We're obviously going to dive on the conservative side. So we're going to dive air tables, and we're going to make sure that we're extra conservative. But I just haven't seen any issues whatsoever with cutting a dive short, with the exception of hypothermia. So for people with spinal cord injuries, especially, you have to think about hypothermia being a concern. And so the heated rash guards really help with that. But somebody with a spinal cord injury is not going to be able to stay in the water as long as other people. Normally they're good for 2 dives, but there may be times when they can't, and there may be times they can do 3 dives, depending on on the conditions and how they're feeling. So yeah, so like with Ronnie, Ronnie, you're the veteran diver in the group of students here. How about that? And so with Ronnie, his pool training took more time, more frequent, shorter sessions. With Roberto, I expect the same. I expect that we're probably not going to get a lot of stamina out of him with muscular dystrophy. We're probably going to have maybe 2-hour chunks of time where we work with him, and we'll have more frequent opportunities. And we just work on the skills. The skills are obviously different than our typical open water. The standards for testing are the same as whatever agency. And so, they're not HSA open water exam materials. It's SEI or whatever. I have different certifications as an instructor I can teach under, but I really like the SEI ones. So okay, here's Ziggy. What are you doing, Ziggy? I know he's invisible too. Ziggy, I hear you, buddy. Ziggy and Finn have a they have a bond that's just really adorable. So Finn likes to clean and groom Ziggy, and Ziggy's just crazy about Finn. So they're constantly, you can see his tail every now and then coming in the picture. But anyway, yeah, there are no dumb questions at all. So what other questions do you have?
How do we get on that list to go places and help other people?
Say that again, Melissa.
How do you get on that list to like be able to utilize your HSA? I'm guessing it's gonna take some time for COVID restrictions to go down, but
yeah,
like,
once the COVID restrictions are off, I'll reach out and just reach out back to me. I'm plugged into several different organizations. They have an email list, and they've just stopped the list since COVID. But they'll send a call, like a call for dive buddies, and they want HSA dive buddies. There are other certifying agencies, but I can tell you that HSA has been around the longest, and they have the highest standards. And Ronnie and I dived with another really well-known competitor to HSA in South Florida. And I like their checklist system, but I was shocked at how unsafe it was compared to HSA. Like, one reason I love HSA and one reason I love SEI is that the safety standards are the best, like the absolute best. And to me, it's all about safety and having fun. But safety is making sure that people are very knowledgeable, about decompression sickness, about anything, dive tables, everything. And so that's one reason that I really like the combination. Ronnie, it's funny because as I was trying to get access to the HSA materials on their website portal, I actually found the email where I processed your certification card. And yeah, and so your open water certification card was HSA, and then all the other training since then has been SEI. And of course, you've gotten other certifications too, including with underwater archaeology. But I just love all the opportunities to learn, and yeah. So I hope that answered your question. Okay.
Did you say underwater archaeology?
Yeah. We had what do we have, like 21 people in the class. We had to break it into sections, and it was great. So every time I have an opportunity to bring people in to do training, I do. And this was just a wonderful experience where we had pool session time and we had checkout dives in Port St. Joe. And yeah, and so obviously those opportunities are less since COVID. I expect they're going to start increasing again. But I am extra careful when it comes to COVID, even with vaccinations. I love that people are getting vaccinated, but me having leukemia, it's not even just about me. I feel like there are a lot of people out there who are immunocompromised or otherwise vulnerable. And the last thing I want to do is I'm trying to help people and then I end up making them sick. And so we have so many extra precautions in place. And one of the ones that I do that nobody else that I know of does is I make everyone get a negative COVID test before we go in the pool. And I just think that it's an extra precaution. I had some students message me about it and say, what if I've already so I have a girl in the upcoming class, the class that starts on the 25th. What if I've already had COVID 2 times and it kicked my butt and the second time was worse than the first, and I had both vaccinations? Do I still have to have the test? And I said, yes, you still have to have the test, and here's why. And she said, I totally respect that and I'll get the test. I said, thank you. The chances of it coming back positive are slim to none, which is great. But I just think it's a respect thing. We don't want to make people sick. We're one of the first organizations that actually started back to teaching scuba. A lot of places still are not teaching it. And so we want to show that it's possible to do it safely. And, yeah, so. All right, what other questions? We have 2 films. I don't know if you want me to put them, live stream them now, or I can live stream them. If anyone needs to walk away, you can walk away. And I can keep them, then hopefully they'll show more, or we could end. I think I should probably at least try to see if I can share this screen. Let me know how you feel about this.
This was from from part 2, right? All of this video.
Yeah, I have two videos. The first one is 22 minutes long.
Mhm.
And so I think what I'm going to try to do is live stream it. And if anyone needs to walk away, they can walk away. And then I'll send a link to the recording so you can watch this. And I know the quality is going to be better than with I was using a system called OBS before, and it just wasn't as high of quality. So I think it's going to be good. But you guys tell me as I'm playing it, let me know that, give me like some thumbs up or whatever, and let me know that it's working okay. By the way, the video quality is old and terrible anyway. Okay, can you guys see it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
On land, Thierry Luxemburger's wheelchair has given him mobility since polio paralyzed his legs at the age of 4. But out there, he doesn't need it. I am Jean-Michel Cousteau. When Thierry entered the surface a moment ago and swam to a favorite dive site offshore there, there was no well-intentioned attendant at his side, only his dive buddy, his able-bodied brother, Jerry. Remarkable, yes, but unprecedented? No. Although Thierry challenged the power of these breakers entirely on his own, he was guided by this knowledge of the sea and by the superior diving skills he learned as a student of the Handicapped Scuba Association. The rest of Thierry's class is about to embark upon an adventure in the freedom of the deep. What personal challenge must handicapped people overcome to scuba dive? What does the thrill of such an accomplishment feel like to someone who has not walked in years, or perhaps not at all? No different than for you or me. The experience is the same, and it is this perception that makes the Handicapped Scuba Association and its program so unique since 1975. It is what has taken the wheelchair out of the wheelchair sports for these courageous men and women. It is the vision and purpose of the story you're about to see. These beach entry dives are difficult for most divers, handicapped or not, and doing them right requires plenty of training that begins in the swimming pool under the watchful eye of program director Jim Gattaker.
Jim began diving 10 years ago while recovering from an injury to his right arm. He is the prime mover behind the Handicapped Scuba Association. In these HSA classes, handicapped and able-bodied students are taught together, mastering the same aquatic skills. Jeff Richcreek, injured 5 years ago when an industrial accident paralyzed him from the waist down, pursues his love of the sea. Kim Butler finds that scuba diving adds dimension to her marine biology studies. A stroke when she was 2 years old paralyzed the right side of her body. For ex-paratrooper Ed Ramirez, paralyzed from wounds he received in Vietnam, scuba diving satisfies his quest for adventure. Norm Anderson, Polio at the age of 10 hasn't stopped him from becoming an advanced scuba diver or from helping Jim teach the current class. Terry Luxemburger says diving is the most exciting thing he's ever done, a statement that inspired his younger brother, Jerry. Now they go sea venturing together. Ken Force, accidental injuries while in the service left him paralyzed from the chest down. He likes traveling, especially if diving is included in his getaway plans. The students learn in the pool how to cope with real-life situations that demand sound judgment and decisive action. Now, far into their training, these students confidently practice the exercises they'll need as scuba divers. Kim performs a diving basic, removing and clearing her mask. Dropping his weight belt, Terry makes an emergency buoyant ascent, emphasizing the importance of self-rescue. Norm assists Ken for a simulated out-of-air emergency, sharing a regulator while swimming to the surface. Another complicated exercise calls for Eddie to rescue an unconscious diver from the bottom of the pool. He does it expertly, proving that disabilities don't necessarily hamper one's effectiveness. After surfacing with the victim, Ed positions him, applies ventilations, then tows him to safety. Now they're ready to test these skills in a more demanding environment, the Pacific Ocean. Early Saturday morning, Jim assembles the class on a Laguna Beach bluff overlooking Divers Cove. Scott Eckholt, blind since the age of 10, prepares his own equipment, guided only by what his hands can feel. For handicapped divers, there aren't any standard ways to reach the beach. Some, like Terry, manage on their own. Others with different injury levels need assistance. On the beach, students review the life-saving techniques they'll soon practice in the sea. Ken and Ed leave their wheelchairs behind and scoot sea lion style toward the water. Jeff and his dive buddy Pete Stark, an ex-Special Forces medic, pause for a moment to survey ocean conditions. These waves often break with surprising speed and intensity. But the divers can use such factors to help them enter and exit the turbulent surf. Rescuing an unconscious dive buddy is a difficult but essential exercise. Each student must locate a simulated victim, then quickly supply life-sustaining ventilations and tow him to safety. Here, Scott, who cannot see, relies on his remaining senses to successfully perform this critical exercise. Each rescuer performs with confidence and precision, an undeniable demonstration of pool time well spent. Later, the class dons scuba gear and completes their beach training with a surf entry. Maneuvering through the breakers, they head toward open water. A spirited HSA class gathers on deck prior to their certification dive at Catalina Island. To enter the water, some handicapped divers use the swim step, while most prefer a forward roll at the gate. On the surface, Jim dispenses a few last-minute reminders before his students start their ocean checkout and marine life orientation. They drift down to a reef, their first up-close look at the ocean floor. Peter Spielman, injured in a surfing accident, calmly replaces his mask. A difficult task, especially for someone like Peter, a quadriplegic with limited use of his arms and hands. A buddy-breathing ascent ends the checkout, and the divers are free to begin exploring the rich environment surrounding them. The expedition over, they return to the boat, fully certified scuba divers. Each celebrates graduation his own way, spending a reflective moment as the sea view heads for home, or dozing through the breathtaking blaze of a California sunset.
Okay, remember, Terry, all I want is some air. I haven't got enough money to buy anything else. Don't let me buy nothing.
Okay.
That's why I brought you with me. Come on. All we want is some air. That's about it.
See your certification card? We're having a sale today if you want to look around a little.
Oh, maybe.
Hey, check this out.
Look at the new style face mask. Hey, check out the snorkel.
Look at this gauge sale. This is neat. And look at these dive bags.
Boy, I'm getting tempted.
This is really fantastic.
Look at the price on this flag.
Hey, Ed, now all we have to do is go down and buy a boat.
Let's go.
Two-day charters like this one to Santa Cruz Island aboard the dive boat Truth offer opportunities for a variety of diving experiences that not only challenge a diver's skill, but his thirst for adventure as well. They also provide ample time to experiment with advanced equipment, like Terry's diving propulsion vehicle, or innovative accessories like Pete's webbed swimming gloves. Entering a majestic kelp forest, they take note of the topographical features to use in orienting themselves during the trip's highlight, a night dive. Typical of their evolving awareness within the ocean realm, one diver carefully uncovers a well-camouflaged abalone. By now, Terry is proficient with his scooter and swims circles around his able-bodied brother. Jim briefs the class before they plunge into the sea's liquid night. silently, almost invisibly, resembling astronauts in outer space. They penetrate the gravity-free atmosphere of inner space. The mysteries of the deep appear all the more mysterious when cloaked in darkness. Gliding along, their lights shine upon a strange metropolis of swaying kelp and foraging sea life. No one knows the Colorado River better than Max Groom, an engineer with the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. He's promised the HSA a ride they'll never forget through the spillway system of Hoover Dam. Water cascades down an overflow portal and into a tunnel buried deep within the canyon wall. Max's powerboat rockets towards a half circle of light where the tunnel empties into the Colorado. In a moment, these divers will shoot this churning stretch of water, Ringbolt Rapids, that travels seawards at speeds up to 15 miles an hour. Propelled by fast currents, they become part of the river, tumbling and bubbling delightedly rudderless over large boulders and into 60-foot chasms. Their jubilation undisguised, the divers surface and reboard, all the while mentally mapping their next destination. On the Golden Doubloon, 3 miles out from San Pedro Harbor, advanced HSA divers prepare for a deep dive on the wreck of the Olympic. Diving here requires critical planning. The 258-foot steel hull of this venerable ship lies in 100 feet of water. Built in 1877, the Olympic was once a stately merchant vessel, triple-masted, square-rigged, that sailed between England and India. But in 1940, she was sunk by a Japanese freighter. A ghostly figure now, her encrusted wreckage forms an artificial reef, home to an abundance of marine life, including a carpet of strawberry anemones and a myriad of fleeting fish flashing silver through the waveless deep. Time, at this depth, quickly runs out, and soon the divers must return to the surface. Even though this adventure is nearly over, many more await discovery, not only by these experienced dive buddies, but by future students of the Handicapped Scuba Association.
Kim, what motivated you to go scuba diving and what did you get out of the experience?
I wanted the challenge of a new experience and a new kind of adventure.
In nature, complete dependency or independency does not exist. Everything interacts within a constantly changing environment. And this process is as observable in the world's societies as it is in the world's oceans. Not many years ago, for instance, no one would have thought it possible for paraplegics and even the blind to participate in an adventure sport like scuba diving. But times change and we change with them. Having a physical disability isn't the same as being disabled. Failing to make this distinction, we leave out the most important ingredient in human achievement, the desire in each of us to strive for the best we can be. Everyone lives in an age of opportunities and technological advances, and yet our most marvelous and moving experiences are still those victories of will and spirit against seemingly unsurmountable odds. The kind of victories exemplified by the divers of the Handicapped Scuba Association. So, did you go to the Colorado River dive?
Yeah. Very much. It's probably the most exciting thing I ever did in my life. Going down to the bottom of the river and getting caught in a whirlpool, going darker and darker, and I looked at my gauge and I was at 60 feet. And then I spun back out again and went on down.
Really? Is that the most memorable dive that you've had?
For me personally, it is the most memorable dive because we were allowed into areas that were totally restricted to the public. We saw things that just normal people don't see. And of course, the dive itself, going through the rapids, the speed of the water is something.
All right. So obviously that video was made a very long time ago. And, you know, I want you to think back to when it was made. Really, not even most people were diving or even heard of scuba diving. It was very, very innovative at the time. Obviously, language has changed. Awareness for environmental considerations has changed. Science has changed. You know, so in many ways, it's hard to watch too, you know, or even listen to. Like with language, you all know how important language is to me. And so when we talk about people, Jamie, I love your doggy. I'm sorry, that is a cute dog. Okay, and so Melissa's going to step out. It looks like, so that's fine. But
Back in a few minutes.
okay, but language is really important. And, you know, calling people handicapped was something that maybe 20, 30 years ago was okay. And we know better now, we think, right? But I actually had somebody message my nonprofit recently, and she said she had 2 friends who were handicapped and she wanted to bring them to an event. And I corrected her, you know, in the nicest way I could. I was like, well, that's great that you have friends with disabilities, but please refrain from using that word. And she was like, oh, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. What should I say? And I explained to her that, you know, that word is not being used anymore. Obviously, it is still in the name of this organization, which I don't like, you know, and I've talked to Jim about changing it. But when you have a history this deep of an organization, it's hard. And there are other organizations out there that haven't changed their language in the name of their organization either. So they tend to just use their letters. So like my dad works a lot with kids with special needs, and there is a school with the name retarded still in it, a big school with the name retarded still in it. We know better not to use that kind of language, right? Right? Yes. And so, you know, it's derogatory, and even when we're just talking to people who are friends, we really have to watch our language. I feel like we're all ambassadors for people who are differently abled. And I think that we just need to make sure that we put the person above. I saw my cat just suddenly appeared.
Yeah,
That was weird.
it's visible
He's like
for a
invisible to
second.
me.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. But I do, you know, I really want us to educate other people about how to, sorry, she's just, that's cracking me up. How to have language that's positive, and it's really about focusing on the person rather than the person's limitation. I know, Jamie, it is funny. So
It's
that's
very Harry Potter. It's
that's
like
Willow, by the way. Not
That's
only is she blind, but she has the ability to disappear.
Yeah, I was thinking Harry Potter too. Like it's like coming and going.
That's funny. So yeah, what did you think of the video other than knowing that it's really old and they obviously, I think that the people are pretty, I don't know how else to say it. They're pretty badass, That's in California. Do you know how cold the water is there? Yeah.
When they got into the current and they were just flying through there.
Yeah,
and they were like,
I was
we
going
have
to
so much
say
fun.
that.
I was like, I would have freaked out, man.
So yeah, we're a little more focused on safety these days, especially. But even then, I think that it was cool thinking back to what it must have been like then to be a person in a wheelchair and how little opportunity there was and how little acceptance there was. This was before the Americans with Disabilities Act. This was before, people knew better. This was back when a lot of people with disabilities were not seen at all. And
Well, I think he mentions like the one part and where they're going into the store and he was like, I can't remember the verbiage he used, but essentially like, hopefully they even let us like fill our tanks up because, whatever. And he gives, and he has a card. So in essence, that's what you need to get your tanks filled. But he was clearly indicating that probably in other places, they're like, no, you're handicapped as the video. And so you can't get, your tanks filled or whatever. And I like the humor that once they were in the store and I guess the person did help them, they ended up buying a bunch of stuff.
Right. There's a sale here. I love that. Look at that brand new dive mask. And I'm like, wow. Hey, Ronnie, didn't we see that in the museum? We went to this underwater museum of, what was it called? Of diving? The underwater museum of diving. It was in
the Panama City one?
No, it's in the Keys.
Oh.
No,
Okay.
It was a different museum. There is one in Panama City too. What is it called? Anyway, it's really cool. And I was thinking some of the things they had in there were in that museum that we saw, right? That was it. That was
That's a cool museum.
Yeah, that was a really cool museum. But all right, so shall I show the other film real quick? It's 25 minutes, you guys. If you need to stretch or anything during, that's fine. But after this, we'll call it a night. We'll have a couple little discussions, then we'll call it a night, and everyone will do their exams and we'll pick a date. Do we want to pick a date now? We don't have Maureen and Frank, but maybe we could pick a couple of possible dates and then I can start showing the film, and if anyone needs to leave early, that'd be fine. So how about next week? We could do Tuesday the 27th. I was going to say Friday the 30th. I'm going to be driving to and from the Mayo Clinic every Monday and Friday for the next 3 weeks. So have Tuesday the 27th, Monday the 3rd, Thursday the 6th. Do any of those dates work for anyone?
They all work for me, and I think you were saying that you probably wanted to do it prior to
I
the
would
second.
love to if it's possible. That would be nice if it's possible.
The 27th sounds pretty good.
Yeah, for me too.
Does that work for everybody?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to put it, and I don't hear any objections. I'm putting it in my calendar, and do we want to do a backup date of the 26th just in case?
I can do that.
Sounds good too.
Okay.
Is that the Monday before
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, it would be a week from today.
If I can be in my car again, then that's definitely fine with me.
Yeah, in the beginning?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Is earlier better, Melissa?
Not at all, no.
Okay, okay. All right.
Class
So,
goes until 7:45. I left early today.
oh, wow. All right. So we're going to shoot for the 27th, but if Frank and Maureen come back and say they can't do the 27th, we'll see if the 26th will work. Okay. And we
Same
could
time?
always go to, we could always do 8 p.m. It shouldn't take too long. We could always do 8 p.m. if needed, you know? Is that okay with everybody, just in case?
That sounds good.
Okay, so it'll either be 7:30 on the 27th or 8 on the 26th. But we're going to shoot for the 27th. Sound good? All right. Excellent. So I'm going to start showing this other video. It's called "To Fly into Freedom." Keep in mind, now it is pretty cool. I have to say, I think it's pretty cool that the Cousteaus were so much advocates for people who are differently abled. I think that was very innovative, you know, thinking back to all these decades ago when these films were done and what they did for the industry, including by spotlighting this organization and what they were doing. I think it's pretty awesome. So, but, you know, this is a long time ago. And so expect to be kind of shocked again at some of the things we're going to see. All right. All right. I'm going to share "To Fly into Freedom."
Underwater. It's an alien environment. A world where things are not as they seem. Where sight and sound are distorted. Where gravity is suspended. This is a world where much of life is streamlined for movement. At best, we are only brief visitors here. Water is 800 times more dense than air, and we are obliged to move differently, to test ourselves and to observe without disturbing the choreography of the living reef. It's impossible here to judge by appearance. Flowers in a breeze are actually tiny animals, connected in a coral colony. We too are more closely connected here and stick together, witnesses in this Eden, which is more a jungle than a garden. Sophisticated equipment allows us to visit this exotic place, but each breath reminds us we are in another world. Landscapes of corals are here to be explored, but the time we have underwater is limited. Each of us sees something different on the reef, but some of us feel even more at home here, where there is immunity from gravity, and we swim in a living kaleidoscope. But soon we return to air and sun, and to Alcyon, our prototype windship, with its experimental turbo sails designed to save fuel. This will be home base for me and our crew, and gateway to the paradise below our ship.
I'm Jean-Michel Cousteau. Join us on a Cousteau Society special report here in Fiji with some very special people.
The first to explore underwater with true freedom of movement was my father, Jacques Cousteau.
Millions of people now hear his name and think of his adventures underwater and his commitment to protect and preserve the planet. But few people know that my father's life was forever changed by a nearly fatal accident that left him broken and paralyzed. It was a frightening beginning to a fabulous story. Gilles, tell me what happened.
Oh, Jean-Michel, it's a very old story.
I was just coming out of the French Naval Academy, and I went to the flying school because I wanted to be a Navy flyer. When I had a terrible automobile accident, and I almost lost my life. I got my two arms damaged. This one broken in several places, the other one paralyzed. And then I found myself in a hospital bed with the right arm paralyzed, left arm operated and in a plaster, an infection coming and installing itself in my left arm. And the doctor looking at it and saying, it would be safe to amputate you. I said, no way. I don't want to, I already have a paralyzed arm on the other way. I don't want to lose both my arms. I prefer to take the risk. So he thought I was crazy, but it worked. So my story is very simple. I wanted to be a flyer and I became a diver. So this accident changed completely my life. And I am very lucky because I find underwater about the same kind of feelings that pilots feel in the air. And I experienced this wonderful weightlessness that divers have.
My father never became a pilot, but his dreams of flying came true underwater, where he was free from gravity. Now millions of divers find freedom below the surface, including the divers we're about to meet. We're going to escape with them to the reefs of Fiji to explore the undersea world my father first entered 50 years ago, and to celebrate diving. The people now arriving here at Savu Savu Airport are from 6 different countries. They will explore together Fiji's second largest island, Vanua Levu. These travelers arrive with more than the usual equipment. All of them have suffered some loss of physical abilities, which limits their movements or confines them to wheelchairs. Through accident or illness, they must contend with ordinary events in extraordinary ways. By organizations like the Handicapped Scuba Association, they are all experienced divers. They arrive well prepared and with spare parts. For this group especially, a vacation is more than getting away from the office or out of town. Their vacation is an escape from gravity itself. They are part of an international program designed for people with permanent disabilities. They travel far from home, but the greatest distance traveled is the inner journey each of them has already taken. They are soon to explore some of the most beautiful dive spots in Fiji, a nation where only 3% of its territory is above water. Many of them never expected to be here. For some, their lives were changed by a sudden traumatic accident. In the US alone, there is one disabling spinal cord injury every hour. The difference between a wheelchair and walking is perhaps only a brief moment of chance. These divers have crossed the equator and the international dateline to get here. Now a warm sea is before them. The routine of preparation still takes over, packing dive bags, loading equipment, and each other. The hard work of diving is shared, and no one is alone. Each diver is matched with a specially trained instructor. As buddies, they share a close bond. On land, all this effort seems like a lot of trouble for just a brief time underwater. For everyone, though, it's an exercise in teamwork that expands personal limits. These divers, however, are about to leave many of their limits behind. No amount of training can erase some anxiety of the unknown. They are about to dive in the underwater equivalent of the tropical rainforest. These last moments before diving are critical. Spirits run high, but gearing up is hard work. A wetsuit begins the transformation because the body loses heat 25 times faster in water. Fly underwater requires, ironically, not wings, but lead weights which equalize the buoyancy of water and wetsuit. These divers have more at stake in entering the sea, but they also have more to gain. In their everyday lives, gravity imposes limits on their movements, but underwater, they will be weightless and able to maneuver almost freely. Down to a different world. The barrier is broken. We leave the familiar behind as we begin a slow descent. Even at only 33 feet below, we are under twice as much pressure, so buoyancy is fine-tuned and final checks on equipment are required. I don't know what to expect, but I'm anxious to join these new friends. Although coral reefs grow only 1 centimeter per year, they are the largest structures made by any living thing. Yet it is always the details that amaze me. Like this lionfish with venomous fins, the fish that walks on deadly stilts. The structure of the reef grows to become this underwater metropolis, a city populated with characters like this yellow damselfish. The white film of her eggs, wrapped around wire-like coral, is the focus for this damsel in distress. But I'm the one in need of rescue. I shake a finger, a meaningless human scolding to this fish, which has no fear of me, a bubble-blowing monster. An intruder is an intruder to a creature so committed to protecting its own future generation. This fish has no need of my company, and I leave, thinking of all divers who also overcome the odds to do what they do. A few years ago, no one believed that someone with a physical disability could ever scuba dive. But careful and hard training, sound health and determination, have enabled these divers not only to dive, but to set certain standards for sane behavior and for close but benign observation underwater. Diver Julie Perez knows.
I'm doing something that most people are afraid to do, and I'm successfully doing it, and I'm doing it with other people. There's a lot of things I can't do, but I can dive, and that's a lot.
They are in close communication with their buddies. They achieve neutral buoyancy and move through the water with minimum effort, in slow motion liberty, aware of what's around them and of each other. Their physical limitations are compensated here in this three-dimensional gymnasium where everyone plays. Instructor Denise Dowd has seen what diving can do.
I think what's exciting about working with the disabled is seeing people going beyond their disabilities and out there challenging things that a lot of able-bodied people are afraid to try. Scuba diving, I think, is a difficult sport for a lot of people, and for someone who's disabled to be out there scuba diving and doing as well, or even better than an able-bodied person, can be real ego builders, building self-confidence and self-esteem.
Other divers share their experience. Edison Passafaro from Brazil.
Eu me sinto super bem, super legal em poder mergulhar hoje. I feel fine. It's wonderful in being able to dive now. It's an additional motivation, a sensation of freedom, something that's stimulating to discover super interesting things, a new way of being able to face life.
Terry Luxemburger.
I had polio when I was 4 years old, and when I got into my late 20s, the HSA Handicapped Scuba Association started their program, and instantly I was attracted to it, and I haven't left it since. On land, there's gravity, and it restricts your movements, and it really prevents you from being yourself in a lot of physical ways. When you're in the water, there is no gravity. There's no feeling of being exhausted or worn out, and you can see what Mother Nature has to offer.
Mother Nature offers surprises, like clownfish living in the tentacles of an anemone, an animal that captures and kills other fish. Yet these clownfish make it their home. The anemone protects the clownfish, and the clownfish brings food to the anemone in a symbiotic relationship called mutualism, where both benefit, linked for a lifetime to a small patch of the reef. Unlike these fish, we are free to wander, to explore. Diver Michelle Galler explains it for herself.
Diving has changed my life in that it got me back into the water, and it has inspired me to travel to places I probably wouldn't have traveled. It's just broadened my horizons.
Diving on the reef is like arriving in a crowded city. Creatures moving, interacting, connected in earnest lives. Each dive is an exercise in making connections. Few organisms are alone. Corals survive in colonies. The mandate to cooperate is widespread. Jim Gattiker, the president of the Handicapped Scuba Association, knows.
When I realized that people with disabilities more severe than mine could do scuba diving and got involved in actually training people, it just changed my life completely. My disability became something that I possessed. I have a disability rather than I am disabled. As a result of that, it just motivated me to pass this along to other people.
Through such efforts, handicapped divers and instructors now explore underwater throughout the world, and their lives have been forever changed. Sakuko Kato tells of her experience.
いろいろな魚とかサンゴとかと地上では見られない。
I am touched by the kindness and sympathy of able-bodied people in a way that I was not prior to my disability. And the ocean is the only place where you can see these beautiful fish and different corals. For me, as opposed to being on land, being in the sea is really like being in a dream.
The reef we visit is not a dream, but it is fragile. Coral reefs cover a minuscule 0.2% of the world's oceans, but they contain its most abundant and diverse life. We are actually swimming through a liquid laboratory, full of age-old experiments that are forever new. In the 50 years since my father first entered the sea, we've barely begun to understand the true nature of what we encounter, such as these plate-like corals, animals which must capture sunlight for the tiny plants that live within their tissues. Now we too are part of the experiment, exploring, probing, and learning that it's perhaps not nature we need to control, but ourselves.
How is it? Good. Good. Wake up. Thank you. You're welcome.
On board, it's back to another reality and the 6 different languages of our group. But it doesn't matter. Here, in our own mini United Nations, the language of diplomacy is laughter.
Great. How do you say it in Russian?
In the bright sunshine of a Fijian afternoon, we share a simple but powerful bond: love for the sea. The freedom of being underwater carries over to the rest of our daily lives, as diver Pavel Delopov from Moscow describes.
I was born near the Black Sea in the Ukraine. I was diving before my injury, but after my injury, some things changed. I can't run, but I can swim on and below water just as well, or maybe even better than the others. From early childhood, I loved swimming underwater.
Memories of these personal moments of freedom will live on. In Fiji, the villages and the coral reefs are closely connected. Each village grants or refuses permission to dive its reefs. So we visit Nandi village to say thank you and to share our different points of view.
How are we doing today? Okay. You're looking forward to your dinner? What's your name? Edward? Who did it all? Hey, would you mind just taking a couple for me also?
As with all great trips, this one is over too soon. And like tourists, these divers want to capture one last image before leaving. The welcoming waters of Fiji remain vivid in my memory of this trip, where for a brief moment we abandoned gravity, and as in my father's dream, we flew in freedom.
All right, that one was 1992. So that was how many years?
I was 1 years old.
Oh, that was almost 30 years ago. That's wow. So, and again, language, form, science, everything has changed. But to see the Cousteaus themselves climbing on coral, it's heartbreaking, right? I mean, literally climbing on coral. So, but yeah, we'd have to keep thinking, think about the times. That being said, talk about innovation, what they were doing for people. Oh, hush. What they were doing for people who were differently abled is just awesome, you know? And man, looking at the wheelchairs back then too is pretty, Ronnie, how would you like to have a big old, crazy wheelchair like that? All right. Any thoughts about that film or the one prior?
Have they done any research to show that like the increase in diving has, I can imagine that people increase diving doing poor things with reefs or is killing the reefs. So like what if scuba diving never had been discovered, quote unquote, so people weren't going down and touching the reefs and killing it? Like
So
how much percentage is it people? What percentage is it?
It's very, very small, but I can tell you with education, it wasn't just divers that were climbing on the reef. In most countries, including Fiji, they kill, and to this day they have a really hard time with education. They kill everything on the reef. They swimmers, free divers climb on the reef and they take things off of the reef. And so divers are 1% of the population today. Back then it was a lot less. So I think the impact, if anything, I think, with our organization especially, we're all about educating people about environmental impact. And what we do is we bring bags and we clean other people's garbage. When I travel the world, I bring mesh bags with me and I just clean. And will it make a difference? Probably not, because there's just plastic. It's heartbreaking to me, like so heartbreaking. And I think I told you all that my last trip to Indonesia, I had like 42 dives and I only saw one turtle, and that turtle was choking on plastic. And so and we were 24 hours removed from civilization by boat, and there was plastic everywhere. So please stop using plastic water bottles. Please don't ever use straws. Reusable straws are a great thing. Um, just that to me is the worst. And then of course, people using fertilizers, looking at even places locally like Wakulla Springs, they're just destroying the ecosystem with wanting their lawns to look green. And this kind of thing is a serious problem. So has there been research on diver impact? Not really, because I think that when it comes to pollution and pesticide use and local practices, for example, when I was in Cayman Brac assisting dive pirates, we were diving in places where they had bombed the reefs. That was the practice they used to use to get, they would bomb it. They would literally deploy a bomb to explode the reef so that they could get all the fish out of it, you know. And it's, you can see the impact. It's heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. So what I am excited about with research is there's been a lot of research showing the physical and emotional benefits of scuba diving to people with disabilities. And these can be, you know, things ranging from PTSD and anxiety and depression to paraplegia and quadriplegia and multiple sclerosis and muscular dystrophy. There has been a lot of research about the physical and emotional benefits of scuba diving. And I personally have benefited from it with regard to both physical and emotional. And I just, one reason I want to share it with everybody is that I know firsthand and from reading the research how important it is. Yeah, Ronnie said it was dynamite fishing. You're right. That's what they called it, dynamite fishing. And that practice is still used in a lot of places. And that is just, you talk about destructive. Horrible. So when I dived in the Caymans, I'll tell you with Grand Cayman, it's been sad for a long, long time. But when I saw Cayman Brac, I was just heartbroken at the devastation that you can see from dynamite fishing. So, and then plastic, you know, gosh, I can't even, I don't understand why people are buying plastic anything. But that's the thing that gets me in all the countries that I've had the pleasure of visiting and diving in, is that diving to me is pretty sad in a lot of places, including Fiji. Fiji had very little sea life when I went there. We actually have more sea life in South Florida, you know, despite the challenges, despite the fact that 20 years ago they sunk tires thinking that it would make a great artificial reef. Most of the places here have pulled that kind of stuff from the environment, but other places like Fiji still have it. And I've dived in water that was so thick with pollution that I tasted like fuel, gasoline, you know, in the water. It was just disgusting. Yeah, so I just think we all have to be more kind to the environment, and then we need to try to educate other people about it. And I do think that there's a push now to train divers to be that way. So, okay, so Gizem, trawling is one of the biggest issues in Turkey. Yeah, and then they have all that bycatch and, right? Yeah, it's sad. It's very sad. But let's on a positive note, okay? We're here to make a difference, and that includes with our diving. Yeah, many of you have been on cleanup dives with me. You know, we volunteer with Keep Wakulla County Beautiful, and we volunteer with anywhere we can. We bring our bags to Big Blue or anywhere, and we do our cleans in Panama City and at the jetties, and everywhere where we go, we want to make it a better place for people and for marine life. So, all right, any final questions or thoughts? Okay, I did get a message back from Frank that he's available on Tuesday. And so we're going to go ahead and put Tuesday the 27th at 7:30 p.m., 19:30 in our calendars. And I'll send a follow-up email. I'll also, once this is done processing, I'll send you a link for anyone who needed to step away. But thanks for hanging in there, and I hope you have a great evening. Thanks for being there. I'm really excited about our in-person stuff too.
Yeah,
So
me too. Thank you.
Gabrielle, can you stay with me for a second?
Sure, of course. Jamie.
Good night, guys.
Bye. Good night.
All right, bye. I'm going to stop recording now. All right.